Welcome, everyone. My name is Chris Martinez, and I'm the mayor of Gadventures. That's right. If you've been to a few of these, you would know that we do have a mayor at Gadventures, and that's me. And all that means is I have the really great fortune of championing the purpose-driven, passionate people that make up Gadventures. And every once in a while, I get to hang out with fine folks like you for amazing conversations like this. We do once again want to welcome everyone today. We're expecting around 500 people from around the world. We've got friends from Canada, the United Kingdom, the United States, and we even have some friends for us from as far as Bolivia, Kenya, and Serbia. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We sincerely hope that you and your families are safe and well at this time, and we appreciate you taking your much valuable time to join us today in the latest of our series of Retravel Live virtual events, where we're addressing how we can reshape travel on the other side of this pandemic. Today, we're bringing back some of our favorite media guests for a forward-looking event as we shift into 2021 and say goodbye to 2020. A couple housekeeping items before we go ahead and get started. We have collected all of your questions in advance and are going to attempt to answer as many of those as possible throughout the content of the conversation. In addition to that, if you didn't have a chance to ask a question, if you get inspired through this conversation, all good. Please take advantage of the question and answer or Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We're going to look to answer some of those towards the end of today's conversation. In addition, we recommend that everyone selects fit to screen at the top of your Zoom window, just to make sure you get the best possible viewing experience. And finally, we're going to be recording this session. So if you're inspired, want to refer back to it, need a step away because we're doing, work from home things right now, don't worry, it'll be online for you shortly via our YouTube account. Now, before we get things started, I think it's only right that we do a couple introductions. And so first off, I'd like to introduce our host and moderator today, Bruce Poon-Tip. Bruce is the author of Loop Tale and is an entrepreneur and philanthropist, but you all might know him best as the founder of Gadventures, which was started 30 years ago. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here.
In addition, we have Lynn Hughes joining us today. Lynn is the founder and editor-in-chief of Wanderlust Travel Media. Lynn is still very much hands-on as editor-in-chief, and she's a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society and is regularly consulted on travel-related issues, especially regarding sustainable tourism. She strongly believes in tourism as a force for good, benefiting local communities, wildlife, and the world. Welcome, Lynn. In addition, we've got Joe Diaz with us here today. Joe Diaz is the co-founder of AFAR Media. AFAR inspires, enables, and guides discerning travelers through its award-winning platforms, AFAR Magazine and AFAR.com. Joe passionately believes in the transformational power of travel, and he's an accomplished speaker and frequently lends his expertise on a variety of topics, including travel trends and innovation. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Chris.
Finally, and last but not least, we're joined today by Shannon Stahl, the CEO of the Adventure Travel Trade Association. Shannon has led the Adventure Travel Trade Association as CEO since 2004, restarting the organization and pursuing the vision that it could be a powerful force for good in the tourism industry. Shannon has been advising and speaking around the world for the last 15 years, advocating for responsible tourism. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you.
And on that note, I'm going to fade away into these imaginary mountains and let Bruce take it from here. Take it away, Bruce.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody, and great to see you guys again. So this was, without a doubt, my favorite panel that we did this year. As you know, we all shifted into webinars this year. The one that we did seemed like ages ago now, but it was one of our first ones, but still one of our best. So I'm so glad to have all of you back for this very important get-together, which is saying goodbye to 2020. Everyone has their views on the success we had in 2020 or not, and and a view of 2021. So thank you all for coming back. You definitely my favorite panel this year, and you guys are still bringing the heat because I think we had over 1,000 people sign up for this thing today. So everyone's interested to hear what you guys have to say. But I wanted to keep this light and talk about trends and looking forward and exciting things about 2021 and getting people moving again. But most questions are coming that have come in. A lot of questions, anyways, have been about the vaccine. The big vaccine. This is the news of the week, news of the year. And it's caused a lot of questions about how fast people can get it, and is it the magic bullet? So let's start there, and let's start with you, Lynn, because you in the UK, I think, jabbed the first person with the vaccine.
Well, I didn't personally.
It was all over the world. That old lady.
Oh, exactly, and they are starting with the older people, and various theories around that one, but. I've actually been in a couple of industry seminars today, something, for instance, called the Association of Independent Tour Operators had their annual conference this morning. And they said there that they have seen an uplift in inquiries in the last couple of weeks from more mature people. So I think, the news of the vaccine anyway, that it was being released so quickly, led to a great uplift in visits to websites, in inquiries. I mean, we saw it ourselves with the Wanderlust website, that things like bucket list adventures were coming right up into the top 10 again as soon as the vaccine was announced. But interestingly, in this conference this morning, they said, what's more, they've seen that the more mature people, if you like, the over 50s, the over 60s, are kind of banging the drum as well to get out there again, because, of course, they've been the more vulnerable group. And with them, it has been the vaccine that is going to be the deciding factor to get them traveling again. So they really feel that by, for instance, Easter, people will be booking their adventure trips again.
And that's actually a surprise for us as operators, because we were all planning, as this pandemic was going on, we were all planning that older travelers were going to be the first to pick up. Because they're most vulnerable, but it seems like they're distributing the vaccine by age, vaccinating elderly first, which is the right thing to do, which might get them traveling first. So it's completely flipped the switch on the plan. What about you, Joe? Is the vaccine? Is it magic bullet, or what's the prediction?
Well, it's been a magic bullet for all of those pharmaceutical company stock prices, for sure. That's, I think, been the only magic bullet. We know, I think we know well enough now that there is no such thing as a silver bullet, but it's going to be extremely helpful. And one of the interesting things we've seen over the summer with our audience is that before there was even news of a vaccine, when we were talking back in June or July and had our first conversation, we saw that approximately 90% of our audience said that they would travel regardless of if there was a vaccine or not. So that wasn't as important to them. But when the news started to break that there were effective vaccines that would be distributed in the very short term, those numbers started to change, and people got a little bit more conservative and said, you know what, since there is a vaccine coming, we might as well wait. And, I think part of that too is just, we should be mindful of the extreme toll that it's taken on our economies, on our friends and family, all the loss that we've experienced. And so I think people are recognizing that, they can still hold off a little bit before we get out there, and let's do this in a way that's responsible and respectful for everybody.
Yeah. And what about you, Shannon? What do you remember saying?
Yeah, I think especially in the U.S., both the political shift that just occurred and the vaccine are like the two great pieces of news. So that's having us all having gone through months and months of nothing but seemingly depressing bad news. That's been a real boost. Not to candy coat it, there still is, like Joe also described, there's still a gap. We still have to get a few months down the road, but I think now that there's hope and there seems to be some sort of potential finish line, which will probably be different for different destinations. But yeah, definitely a big upswing in hope. We're hearing that there is huge pent up demand. I don't think it'll recover all the same. I think it'll be a little, fits and starts in different places and different types of activities, but absolutely such a better outlook with the recent news.
And Shannon, did you hear anything?
I mean, to piggyback on that, Bruce, just really quick, I mean, what Shannon said about pent-up demand, and Lynn mentioned it too in the UK, we're seeing that as well, right? I mean, it's ironic that in a time when restrictions, the amount of traffic that's coming to our site, getting ready to plan their trips, thinking about their trips, dreaming about their trips, that's happening right now. 130% increase year over year for us just on our digital traffic. So there's a lot of good momentum there. And I'm sure, Bruce, you know, I heard some really good news about how your cyber sales went, you know, at Gadventures, and that there was a lot of volume and a lot of bookings happening during your cyber sales. So this is all very, very encouraging for us.
But Shannon, have you heard anything, just because you have such a global base of members, have you heard anything about the actual rollout? Because obviously, you know, the UK is getting vaccinated, the US is getting vaccinated, Canada, we're starting as well. But, you know, we have to get, you know, vaccinations to some of the most in need countries. And I don't hear talk about that. And of course, in order for it to be, have a full global kind of impact, you know, we have to get vaccinations into developing countries, and obviously they can manufacture them only so fast. Have you heard anything about how those rollouts will go, or?
Boy, you know, I have not. It's been the bits and pieces that we've heard feel more like front edge of rumors. And so I would be hesitant to say that I know what's happening there. I think it raises new ethical concerns. Like, let's say there's a bunch of Western travelers that got the vaccine who might even be carrying the virus, going to places like you just described, where maybe in an emerging destination where the vaccination has not happened yet. You know, that's an ethical issue that we're going to have to think about. These are things that, you know, never could have crossed our minds a year ago. So I think it'll be a rockier start than we think. And, you know, I think as soon as there are countries that are mostly vaccinated, I'm sure that will probably be a great tourism campaign for them. You know, people will say, okay, Canada's pretty much done. Let's go to Canada. So I think it'll be really, really choppy, the relaunch.
Right. Well, what about destinations? Which destinations do you think will emerge first? Do you think it'll reflect on the destinations that handled the pandemic better? Like South Korea obviously did an amazing job. And they launched an amazing campaign in the last couple of days, by the way. I don't know if anyone's seen it.
Right.
That'll affect where people go. Lynn, I'll direct this to you.
I think it will definitely have an impact. And, you know, we've been surveying our readers every few weeks since the pandemic started. One of the questions we keep asking them as well is about wish list and where they do want to go once they travel. And you can see some trends emerging, and it's mostly destinations that have handled the pandemic really well, and destinations typically as well that have quite a bit of space. So places like Costa Rica, Canada, New Zealand, and parts of Australia, you know, people really want to visit. Japan, actually, you know, Japan has been really popular, but they are seen as a safe destination where they are naturally safe. You know, they wear masks anyway, and they've handled it very well. So all those sorts of things are a factor for, you know, people to feel safe about it. Of course, the other trend, though, is places that have got direct flights. That is going to be more important, I think, than ever before for first visits, because we've certainly found from our readers and also from anecdotal evidence that people are actually nervous about being in airports and being on planes. And so the days of, you know, transferring through airports, I'm not saying they're gone, but people are just going to be so much more wary than that. And also of internal flights in certain countries, at least. So that will be another factor, you know, the ease of getting there. Can you got a nice direct flight with an airline that you trust? So yeah, it's a whole combination of things, but trust, I think, is the word. So it might be somewhere really remote, but, you know, how are you going to get there? How have they handled things? How safe are you going to feel about traveling there and traveling around there?
So we've kind of been in lockdown for 9 months now, heading into Christmas. Canada right now, I don't know about, well, I know what's going on in the US. In some parts of the US, they're just kind of carrying on like nothing's happening, and some parts are locking down. We're kind of heading into Christmas lockdown as well, and I think the UK is the same. Have any of you had traveled in the last 9 months at all? Like, especially most recently, and have any comments on what that experience was like?
I did not get on any planes. We did a couple of long cross-country trips because we actually relocated from Washington to Colorado. So we did 2 big drives, and it was fascinating. The more rural you got, the more people just disdain the mask. And so we had a couple of situations. I actually had a run-in with somebody at a grocery store for wearing a mask. And so that's the only travel I've done is road tripping. And for the most part, it's pretty manageable.
So you haven't taken, so all of you have not taken a plane for 9 months? Wow.
No, in my case, yeah. In my case, I've sent freelance journalists off into the world. Some of them have just been so eager to go. But the simple fact is as well, I mean, all of us, we're running organizations, running our companies or whatever, or heavily involved in the running of them. And it has just been a practical issue of not really being able to get out and about in these strange times. But I have done a couple of short domestic trips, like Shane, and one of the ones I did do, for instance, was down to Cornwall in October, and that would usually count as out of season. But they said that it was the busiest October they had ever had. And actually, it was a really good thing, a really positive thing, because it was still not as crowded. Parts of Cornwall, like where I was, St. Ives, it's normally a real honeypot destination in July and August, where it's awful. And so instead of that, they were having this wonderful autumn, which meant that people still had jobs in hospitality. The restaurants were still open, the shops were still open, and not just on a skeleton team either. So it was just that, the local guides all had work, you could still go out and do boat trips to see seals. And so they were really benefiting from it. And I've seen quite a move in the UK to trying to now make sense of that and try to promote themselves as somewhere where, if you're not in lockdown, but somewhere that you can actually go and visit and have a great experience and really playing on that. And so there's been definite benefits for domestic tourism.
Yeah, I took 2 flights actually in recent months, but in Canada, just to go to Calgary, Calgary here, just across the country, to see my mom. And I have to say that the experience, just flying is just very different. Like, just the rules that they have now, what you can and can't do, no lineups for bathrooms, no getting up. They serve all the meals first, and then everyone could eat. It was quite interesting. And I think every airline is going to have their own kind of rules. But so the last question before I get into kind of predictions and thoughts for last. One of the big issues that we have as a travel industry is airlines, right? Like, as much as we can do, follow all the protocols locally for social distancing, to run tours or to run programs or to get people, organized on the ground, if people can't get there, it's an issue because we have such limited lift available right now, and the airlines are so grounded and just starting to come back. Does anyone have any kind of news on what's happening with airlines, or what's happening with the industry as a whole right now, or what's going to happen in the new year? Joe, I'll just direct this at you.
Yeah, well, first, Bruce, I mean, to just go back to your original question, I mean, yeah, so when this pandemic started, I had a 4-month-old. Now I have a 13-month-old. So that's been keeping us kind of grounded here and just been able to explore the great state of Maine, which is where we live. My co-founder and business partner, our CEO, Greg Sullivan, he did travel during the pandemic. He actually took a trip to Rwanda. And, while there were logistical complications to the trip, it was an amazing experience for him. And I think one of the takeaways, and you might have this as well, Bruce, I'm curious, is because there's a lot of fear about getting on planes right now. But what we're hearing and what we're seeing is that once you get on that plane, it's not as scary the second time. And I'm curious, Bruce, if that's, you had that experience and you kind of felt that, like, once you got past that original hump of getting on that first flight, was the experience the next time easier for you? And do you think that's going to be the case going forward for a lot of people?
You know, so since the lockdown, I've taken 3 flights. So because when the world started shutting down, I was actually in Barbados, and I decided I didn't think it was going to be as long as it was. So I said I might as well isolate there, be by the beaches instead of come home to Canadian winter. And then I realized I had to come home. So at the height of the panic, which was about March 23rd, I flew home from Barbados to Toronto. And that was scary.
Okay.
I have to say that it broke my heart as someone who is in the travel industry and just took flying for granted. It was like a full contact experience, like people paranoid about their space, grouchy people, everyone, like it's just really intense, which I've never felt on a plane. And when I got off that plane, I realized, wow, like it's going to be a long way back to get people comfortable again. Now, my 2 other flights, because I went to Calgary twice in 2 months, which is September, October, so it was very recent. And it wasn't the same feeling at all. I mean, I think that, you know, everyone was wearing masks. There's new protocols, there's new kind of education that kind of comes on before you get on the plane. People were, you know, very comfortable. One flight was empty, one flight was full, in the 2 that in flights that I took. And the airport experience makes you feel comfortable because literally between the time I checked in to the time I got to security, the amount of people that checks, you know, your temperatures and, you know, questions, and as much as they can do without rapid testing, which is the next step, I think, to get people comfortable. I thought the experience was actually quite good. I mean, you know, there was this whole kind of talk about circulated air, because there's an urban myth about air in a plane is circulated, and that's not true. There's the ventilation in airplanes is actually better than, you know, most homes or offices. So there was a talk about that on both flights I was on, and I thought the experience in general was comfortable. Different for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge in the short term, is just getting people over that initial fear, that initial hump of getting on the plane and seeing what a great job the airlines are doing to make sure that those planes are safe and clean and have the proper protocols in place to mitigate spread. And, you know, I do think that we are in crunch time right now for a lot of the businesses in our industry. You know, this 2020 was a year of shrinking balance sheets in a ridiculous way. We had to, you know, staffs got laid off, assets got disposed of. So now 2021, as we come into this new, you know, reshaping of travel and trying to grow again, it's going to require investment. And I think one of the places that, you know, it's hurting, and we're seeing this, is the airports. Airports have lost billions and billions of dollars of revenue in the last year. And so in order for them to maintain the quality experience and safety that we all are going to require and need, our governments have to step up and really help support the infrastructure that's going to be required to make sure that we can continue to do this in a safe and responsible way as we get through all of the challenges of distributing this vaccine to a global population. So there will be challenges. There's a lot of work to be done. The U.S. Travel Association in the United States is doing a lot of work on our behalf to make sure that Congress is listening. And I encourage everyone that's listening in today to really, that's one way that you can be an active participant in this, is letting your congressmen, congresswomen, and senators know that we've got a lot of work to do. And unless they start getting to work in Congress and releasing funds to help support our travel infrastructure, you know, we might as well just take our ball and go home if they don't do that. So we need to really push on them and make sure that happens as well.
Yeah. I mean, just adding on to that, Joe, the one thing that was the strangest part of the flights that I took in September was the airport experience. I got to say, I mean, it's, you know, it was like, it's, you know, a dystopian kind of experience where there's no one around and people are all wearing, you know, masks and, you know, protected gear and, you know, lineups to get temperature checks and stuff. And I mean, but it's really easy. There's no lineups, and it's obviously not like it was before in terms, because there's not as many flights. but that was probably the weirdest part of the experience, actually, the different, because I'm used to the airport being a more of an intense experience with so many people and lines and stuff. And that's kind of gone. But let's talk about trends. So let's move on to trends and Retravel for 2021. Shannon, I understand that ATTA released recently some travel trends, snapshot of some travel trends. So what have you found?
Yeah, we did. Euromonitor is a research organization out of Europe that does some great research on travel, and they conducted an intent survey of just the general audience of travelers. And so we mirrored the questions, but asked them only to the customers of ATTA adventure travel companies. So tourists that are predisposed towards adventure, and then analyzed all the data and found that adventure travel will probably recover up to 3 years faster than travel in general. So I think we're very bullish on the future of adventure travel. But also we've been thinking about this, and it's not just adventure travel, but the other passion-driven, let's say spiritual travel or yoga or wellness, foodie. I think all these verticals are going to recover more quickly. And I think in regards to adventure, part of it is people are just more adventurous, right? And they're paying more attention. So it's a little bit more of a sophisticated traveler. They kind of know what they're up against, that there's always going to be some risk when you travel, pre-COVID, post-COVID, it doesn't matter. There's always some risk. But I think that passion-driven travelers are what's going to make travel come back quicker than the pleasure traveler. If you think of the pleasure traveler as somebody who says, I'm just looking for a beach and some cocktails, and they don't really care where they're going. That person might also say, or maybe I'll upgrade my car this year or remodel my bathrooms. So the pleasure traveler, I think, is much more fickle. The adventure traveler, if you're a cyclist, it partly defines you. If you're a birder, you tell people, I'm a birder. That's my thing. So I think that that's going to get those people out much quicker on the road than the average traveler who maybe has lots of options to spend their money on. But if you're a climber, you're going to go climb the minute you can get out there. So plus a lot of the outdoor sports people have continued to do during the pandemic in different locations. So they're ready and raring to get out there. So that's some of the trends. You know, I was on a webinar with some of the secretaries of tourism of Latin America about 3 weeks ago. And it was interesting because all of them said nature, eco, and adventure are going to be the restarts for our tourism economies. So the good news for people that are in the adventure travel industry is it's going to come back quickly when it does. So I'm very encouraged by that.
And what about you, Lynn? What are your readers saying? That you must have some feedback about trends for 2021?
Yeah, I mean, again, nature, and I know that nature is always right up there with our readers, but we've seen in the surveys that's grown even more. And so it really, it bears out what Shannon's saying. I think there's people who, yes, they love nature, but they just can't wait to get out and do more in it. If I look at the sort of content that's been doing well on the website over the last few months, and like Joe and AFAR, we've had a massive increase, not quite as big as yours, Joe. I've written that figure down, gosh, but we've had nearly 100% increase, and things that have been doing well have been things to do with remote destinations, walking. Our walking features have just gone crazy, and so I think people are just dying to actually do something that's a combination of active and in the outdoors, and they want to do it somewhere, obviously, where whether it's close to home or whether it's in a different part of the world, they want to do it, I think, feel space, feel nature, feel connected to nature, and obviously not too many people around, so that's huge. And then we're also just seeing a kind of move as well towards longer trips and slower trips. People want to really make their trip count. I think the days of us taking travel are over, taking travel for granted are over, certainly for now. And I mean, Bruce, you yourself said when you were talking about the flying experience, and you said you used to take it for granted just jumping on a plane. And, you know, we all did. We didn't think anything of it. And you could be quite spontaneous about that. And I think there's just been a real mindset change about that. And so that's really coming through. So, again, we've been getting lots of comments from people that they really want to make their next few trips count. They've got to mean something, and they want to get the most out of them. So they want to spend perhaps a bit more thought on them and spend a bit longer on them.
What about you?
Bruce, there's one other trend I was going to call out too that's different from the past. In the past, every time that we did any sort of quiz of the travelers, what are the number one activities you want to do? Walking, trekking, hiking was always number one. For the first time 2 weeks ago, cycling went higher than walking and trekking and hiking. It was the first time we'd seen that. I thought that is super interesting. All the stories you've heard about bikes not being available at stores, it's true. Everybody's into biking now.
Wow. And Joe, just that same question, just because of your audience is a little bit different. What are your what's your readers and audience saying? What trends for 2021?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think we get to see a lot of the same things. I mean, you know, at AFAR, purpose-driven travel has always been a core part of the type of travel that we do. People, you know, travel as a way to understand the world and their place in it. They use their passions as a way to get beneath the surface. So I like how Shannon was, you know, kind of showing the difference between traveling for just pleasure, traveling for purpose. We always say travel deeper. That's going to continue. I think a lot of, you know, what Lynn was saying too about being out in nature and is still going to continue. You know, one other thing that I think that we've seen is just around the logistics of trips. They're going to be more complicated in 2021 than they were in 2019. Traveling is more complicated. So, you know, we're seeing from our travelers even a stronger reliance on travel advisors or travel agents to help them navigate all of the craziness and chaos that travelers have to go through. I mean, just for example, you know, when Greg was traveling to Rwanda, he did have a connecting flight from San Francisco to Kigali. And his flight, it was supposed to go Doha to Kigali, and that flight got canceled. So he had to go from Doha and fly into Kenya. Well, they have different protocols than Rwanda does. And so your COVID test had to be 48 hours as opposed to 72 hours. Now, for a single person traveling, you can probably fix that relatively quickly. But when you add, you know, a spouse and kids and a group to this, the complications become exponentially more challenging. So this reliance on a travel advisor, a trusted travel agent who knows the suppliers, who's familiar with you, that has the ability to help navigate in time when things go awry, has been another really strong trend that we're seeing right now.
And going into this next year, what have we learned? Like, you know, what's the biggest learnings that we've had from, you know, where let's just, you know, I recently spoke to people that have said, you know, I think we're going to recover faster than we think. And when I say that, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen next month. But some people are predicting, you know, 2023, 2024, and it's just going to happen faster than we think. But, you know, what have we learned as an industry this year? What are the learnings that we can take into 2021? And I'll start with you, Shannon.
Well, I'll start by saying I'm encouraged by seeing United Airlines making their announcement about carbon recapture, which might not seem like might not seem like I'm answering you, but I actually am, because I think that that to me is one of the big guys taking responsibility seriously and not just focusing on pandemic recovery, but also saying climate change is still going to be waiting for us when this is over. I mean, it's still, you know, it's lurking around the corner. So I think the most important thing we can do is really be thoughtful about how we rebuild our own little, whatever your part is in travel, thinking about how you do it more responsibly. The reset button has been hit. And I think that we can look at this now and say, let's rebuild it differently. And the gap that I see, that 3-year potential gap between adventure and mass recovering, my hope is that adventure, eco, responsible tourism gains more ground in that period of time, that we can become more of a dominant force in the travel space to make travel more responsible in the future. So I'd like to say that travel, the Mark Twain quote of travel is fatal to prejudice and all that. I don't believe that anymore. I think that some people become better from travel and some people just stay the same. But I hope that more of the people that want to do better in the way that they travel, in the way that they offer trips, in the way they write about travel, whatever your role is in the ecosystem, that everybody it will be more responsible. And I'm seeing signs of it. I'm seeing really good signs of that. So that's encouraging.
And what about you, Lynn? What have we learned this year? What have we learned that we can take into 2021?
I think that what I've already said, really, that we can't take travel for granted, and that has come through so much, and again, I'm talking about reader surveys, about talking to the trade and everything. People, I think, have just got a greater appreciation. We were terrible before, we just thought, I'll go away next month. Oh, I like the look of that Gadventures trip. Wow, yeah, let's do that. And, you just didn't have to think too much about it. We've been so spoiled. Mm-hmm. And this has actually, I think, made us appreciate that, what the benefits are of travel, how it helps us, how it helps other people, how we've built up this sort of global connectiveness, and it's all been taken away. And I think that, yes, perhaps, it's going to be really interesting to see, will we in another year's time, when you get it all together again, Bruce, will we be saying, everybody's just gone back to normal? Or will we say, no, this has had a longer and term effect. People are thinking about their travels more. They are expecting more out of their travels, and they really are appreciating it more. And I think certainly we most of us on here are going to be feeling that way, certainly initially. We are going to savor every moment of our travels when we go out there again.
Okay, Joe, I got to hear from you on this question as well. What have we learned this year?
We've definitely learned a lot. And I think, it's amazing to see that when human beings can rally around a common cause and put their differences aside, we can get amazing things done. You saw it the way that this vaccine was created, it's unprecedented. And I have confidence that the way it's going to be rolled out is unprecedented. And that's because human beings put their collective differences aside and focused on the most important things. And I think that's what I've learned, is we need to continue to focus on the most important things. And Shannon raised what I think that is, and that is being able to make sure that we have a planet that is thriving for future generations. Because if we do not have a planet that thrives, we might as well just call it a day, because everything else that we're talking about is completely moot. So we cannot take our foot off of the gas pedal. And we need to now, once we get through COVID, really shift our focus and attention on activities that are going to help protect and empower this planet to thrive, as well as our communities and the people that live there. So to me, that is the next big thing. And I think that's where we really need to focus, and everybody can do their part there. And we need to lean into this in a big way.
Couldn't agree more. So I also want to just get predictions, because all of you are such experts and respected in your fields. And this is what I love about this particular panel, because we all kind of have different views. But just quickly, just feedback from all three of you. When do you think people are going to start traveling again? Obviously, within this group, we're all seasoned travelers, and none of us have traveled in the last. And for me, actually, it has more to do with, if I leave this country, I have this quarantine when I get back. As soon as they lift the quarantine, I'm gone. Like they even reduce it. They're testing it right now in one province here, reducing quarantine to 48 hours, getting a rapid test when you come off the plane at the airport. But so for this group here, when, just a prediction and some commentary, when do you think people are going to start traveling again in a meaningful way?
I can also tell you what our members think, because we survey them fairly regularly, and then we, wherever that top of the bell curve is probably pretty close. Although I can remember myself having a conversation with a colleague in April saying, I think this is gonna round up pretty quickly here. And I look back and I think, man, I was so wrong. But a lot of our members, a lot of the tour operators, and our membership is global. They're pointing at Q1, the beginnings of Q1 2021, and then Q2, Q3 is where the bell curve is. But we do have members that are also saying not till 2022. I did talk to the head of one of the CEO of one of the airline collectives, one of the frequent flyer groups. And he said that their data was saying air travel won't be normal again until normal as in 2019 levels until 2024. But that doesn't mean that the adventure industry isn't going to come back quicker than that, which I absolutely believe it will. So if I had to, throw a dart and hit, I would try to hit late 2021 is probably when we're going to really start to feel the engines kicking back into gear. But again, I've been wrong before, and different parts of the sector, like the U.S. rafting day trip, the end of this summer crushed it. Was absolutely off the charts. Lodges crushed it. Most lodges, not all. So it'll be different speeds for different things.
What about you, Joe?
Well, I've also learned, Bruce, that predictions are usually BS. So take mine with a grain of salt here. But honestly, people are already traveling, so that's a good thing. As long as they're doing it responsibly. I think it's going to be very market dependent on what, the type of market that you're in. I mean, to Shannon's point, there's destinations in the United States that have had incredible Q3s and Q4s in terms of visitation. Others that have been completely decimated. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a lot of rocky unevenness going forward. But, I think, as we look to the back half of 2021, that's when I think we'll start to really feel like there's positive momentum and that the lights for all in the industry are starting to, turn back on.
And what about you?
Another thing to watch is, for those interested, see where the destinations are spending their money, their marketing money. Where are they putting their dollars? And you can see that local, DMOs, destination marketing organizations in the United States, are they marketing to international travelers yet? No. When will that turn back on? Probably back half of 2021. So look and see where are the dollars flowing, and that can help you really kind of understand where the lights are going to start turning back on first and foremost. And
Lynn, when do you think people are going to start traveling again?
It's, as I said, it's not going to be a smooth curve. And also, none of us knew when we were here before, was it 6 months ago? We didn't know how long this was going to last. No. I think whatever happens, it's not going to be a lovely kind of huge rebound. It's not going to be a smooth curve going up. It's going to be patchy. Places will open, close still. Vaccinations going to have a big effect. So I think we'll see a bit of a spurt from Easter onwards. I think a lot of people in the UK travel trade are saying September is going to be a big month, September onwards. And then I've also heard of companies putting together great trips for 2022, 2023 that they're going to start marketing now, because they know that people will, if it's a real bucket list type adventure, they'll feel happier probably booking it in for 2022 or 2023. So going to be really mixed. Pick up slightly what Joe said about traveling in the United States, because of course for the UK, the US is a foreign land, and I would say the latest.
It's foreign for me too sometimes, Lynn.
I'm sure. But I think the election result, let's just say, is going to lead to a increase in interest in tourism to the US, and that has been made very clear. And so much so that, for instance, in Wanderlust, next year in our editorial calendar, we are going to be introducing a regular US small feature into every issue of the magazine, because we have already seen just in these last couple of weeks an increase again in interest in travel to the States. And so while there isn't any marketing obviously happening at the moment, I think that that will only be a matter of time. And I think that towards the back end of 2021 and certainly 2022, we think that tourism to the US from the UK will increase. And of course, that will be to the wilder areas, and well, it'll be all over. There's just a lot of interest.
I'll just add some commentary about what you mentioned, Joe, about our cyber sales. Just to add some, we extended. Cyber sales used to be, Black Friday and Cyber Monday. We extended it to like a 3-week extravaganza of kickstarting the travel industry, and we did it incredibly well. It was actually incredible to see, and such for us as a company that have been that it has had constant bad news for 6 months, to have queues of people waiting to book trips. And our booking windows went from which is normally 60 days to 7-8 months, 9 months people are booking, but people are booking and people want to travel again. And we were blown away, and we extended it after the date actually, because we had done it a few days before, or actually a couple of weeks before that we started promoting it. And then we extended it because it did so well. And people are booking trips. I mean, people are wanting to travel. And I've actually been seeing the questions that have come up here, and people are saying, is it a good time to book right now? And it is an amazing time to book right now, or book a holiday, because, well, A, there's so many deals in the market, and B, you can push it out, and there's so much flexibility available with all operators right now. We're all offering flexibility because we know that that's a pain point for people to make a commitment. So there's no better time, and that goes for airlines as well, that are giving so much flexibility for people to just make that decision, because we're all in this together, and we're all trying to do whatever we can to get people to move again and get people comfortable again. So as operators, as airline, hotels, we're all doing whatever we can, and and right now is the best time to kind of start looking at it.
Yeah, Bruce, I was going to say, Bruce, sorry, that's something that we haven't really talked about yet. And I noticed that in the question and answer box, some people have been saying about, but it isn't responsible to travel to other countries. But of course, other countries are hurting. People's livelihoods have been lost. And I don't think the full extent of that is really appreciated by a lot of people. Mm-hmm. That so many people, whether it's the local guides, but also it goes out much further than that. Yes, it's the people who work in hotels and work in camps. It's the people who act as porters and Sherpas. And for all of those, they are probably supporting a whole ecosystem around them, a whole family. Exactly. And so many, the impact of it hasn't really been talked about enough yet. The millions of people around the world who have lost their livelihoods, who perhaps, children are not getting educated, or all sorts of things happening because of the lack of tourism. And, and I think, it is going to be critical that the conscious traveller, the caring traveller, does go back out there and travel again, because they are needed. We are needed.
I saw an operator who posted, and it was really well written. I'm not going to do it justice, but they said, when you do call to book with us, please don't ask for a discount, even though we're over a barrel. Here are the families of our staff that basically this job puts food on the table. So, don't push us down on price. We need it. So I think that's going to be interesting.
That's a good point. When I see there's a lot of people commenting on being ethical. Is it ethical to travel? And obviously it's a complex point, but it's much deeper than it's just when people just scratch the surface, because people don't think about the ethical question when they're asking for discounts, or asking or pressuring us as operators for discounts. And where those discounts, they flow down to the ground. They put pressure on everyone. And we're all just trying to get people to travel again. And to some people where it's necessary for their livelihoods. For us, we're a business, so we want to get our business, and we employ a lot of people, and everyone has a different take on it, and it's much more complex than just on the surface just saying, is it ethically right to travel right now? There's so many different sides to it, and everyone has to really dig deep to match their values to that decision.
Yeah, it's
Bruce, I think that's so
different.
key.
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Joe.
I was just gonna say, I think that's so key that, for all of us to understand, because we're humans, we're built, we want black and white, yes or no, binary answers. Is it good to travel? Is it responsible to travel, or is it not? Is it ethical, or is it not? We live in a very complex world with lots of different inputs, lots of nuance. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us. One, we make our own personal decisions, hopefully in a way that is responsible to our fellow humans and respectful of the planet. But really understanding the nuance and the gray between the black and white is so key. And we don't get that in today's world, because all we look at is the stupid push notification on our phone with a headline that just makes us think one way or the other. And so it really is incumbent upon all of us to try to understand the other positions before placing judgment on them, because there is just a lot of nuance and detail that we have to understand in order to really understand what the right decision is.
Okay, so we have to get to questions, but I can't go because there's tons of questions. Chris is going to come back with questions in a second, but quickly, guys, because we are a bit over time, I can't let you all go without New Year's resolutions. So, do you have a New Year's resolution? Who's ready? Lynn.
Oh gosh, I've already said about appreciating my travels, but actually one trend as well that none of us have mentioned yet is what in the UK certainly we're calling workations, which is when you actually, perhaps not go as far as being a digital nomad, but where you actually go and perhaps spend a month somewhere, or whatever, so you're not just going for a holiday, for a vacation, but you actually go and stay somewhere for a while. And there's been a real trend towards that, and I've seen it happening in recent months. And I think a lot of people are itching to do that as well, because one thing that this has shown, this pandemic, is that we don't need to be in offices 5 days a week. And certainly in the UK.
Is that your resolution? No offices 5 days a week?
Well, we are not going to be going back into the office 5 days a week. We know we're not. And so many other businesses are the same. And so what I want to do in 2021 is actually, having been freed up from that, because I used to be one of those awful people who would never take time out, I had fear of missing out. But if we're not in the office, well, no, I could be sitting in somewhere like by Lake Ochrid in Macedonia and work from there for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And that way as well, I'll be helping the local economy and getting a fresh perspective, but I'll still be able to do just what we're doing now and join all the meetings I need to join and work just as well. So I'm going to travel better. I'm going to make my travels count. But I'm going to make sure as well I get a workation or 2 in there.
Okay. Shannon, Retravel resolution for you.
I guess it would be somewhat similar to Lynn in just that I've always felt like, not always, in the last few years, I've started to really believe that travel is a privilege, not a right. And we travel with such a different attitude when we hold that in our head to say, it's my privilege to be here in Macedonia. It's not my right to necessarily be there. So I think for me, probably traveling more thoughtfully. I think it was too easy to jump on a plane to go for a meeting or 2 meetings, and I don't want to do that anymore. I want to travel more thoughtfully and fewer trips per year, and make them really count. And personal resolution is try not to sweat the small stuff, and it's almost all small stuff. I mean, if anything, this dismantling of our lives over the last 9 months has taught us we can live without a lot of stuff that we thought we needed. So
good. Joe. resolution?
Well, I mean, I just think one, the emphasis and time that I've spent on really trying to understand the issues around sustainability have taught me a lot this year. I was fortunate enough to take a course by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council on sustainable tourism practices, and really learned about the criteria that they use as a way to understand and assess how well suppliers are being in terms of how well they're being good to the planet and its people. So to me, it's developing a set of questions for myself that I can ask any supplier that align, any airline, any hotel, any tour operator, that align with the things that are important to me, and making sure that the dollars that I'm pulling out of my wallet are going into the places that I want them to go, and not just flowing completely offshore. So making sure that that my travel has a bigger impact on the people, communities, and planet is going to be a resolution for me.
Wow. I mean, those are like the deepest resolutions ever. Not one of you said, I'm going to work out.
That was 2020.
We already do that.
That was 2020. We've had all this time to work out. So that,
Okay, I'm going to call Chris back with some questions. We have so many questions, and we're going to run over time. And I'm sorry, but you guys are amazing. Thank you.
So many questions. We're going to run over time, but that's okay. We're all here. Before we go, though, or before we start getting into some of those questions, we did advertise this or market this as a 1-hour event. So if anybody does need to leave, I just want to send you away with a couple notes, and then we'll get into the questions. So real quick, one more time, thank you so much for everyone joining us today. This is the latest event in our Retravel Live series, where we address the most pressing topics in travel and together look at how we can solve them so we can retravel the right way. Visit retravellive.com for more details on our next event. And to learn more about the great work of our guests, please visit Wanderlust magazine at www.wanderlust.co.uk. Joe's team at AFAR at www.afar.com, where you can also subscribe or get the magazines for a friend. And for the incredible, there it is right there, perfect. Not to be outdone by Lynn's right behind her and in her hand.
Get them both.
Stocking stuffers, right? And for the incredible work supporting our industry, the Adventure Travel Trade Association at www.adventuretravel.biz. And you can also download Bruce's Instabook, Unlearn, the Year the Earth Stood Still. Please visit www.unlearn.travel. Now back to some questions. So the first question, Shannon, I'm going to throw it your way. And the question is, what tips would you recommend for safe travel in 2021? And what do you feel are some of the best ways we can be educating ourselves and others on the idea of sustainable travel?
So we're going to go another hour. Just kidding.
Cool, I'm loving it. Yeah.
For me personally, I want to know that the companies that I'm traveling with are taking health and safety seriously. So I would probably ask questions of the operator that I'm going to go with, to describe their health and safety protocols. Let's say it's a really remote region. I would ask the question, because I saw this pop up a lot in the questions here. What are you doing to make sure that we don't potentially contaminate a remote culture, a remote village? And because I know of some operators who have just in-country operators who have already said, look, we're not going to go to any of the remote villages until we know that this thing is passed, because they have no way to get to medical assistance like we do. So I think I would just do a lot of research with the company that you're going to travel with. And then, obviously learn about the destination too. Is it one that's really handling things well, like Japan and South Korea? Or is it a destination that is not taking it seriously, and consider waiting until they sort out their stuff? As far as being sustainable travelers, I think it's our only choice going forward. I really do. I feel like if there's one thing the pandemic taught us, it's we are fragile and we are destroying the world around us when we're not careful about it. So operators like G and many of the other adventure travel companies out there that take it all seriously, carbon footprint, what sort of impact are you having on the social fabric? So I always encourage people to ask the operator, don't say, are you responsible? Ask, tell me how you invest in being a responsible travel company. And they should be able to answer that with a really clear, a clear answer that makes sense to you, the traveler. So that would be my suggestion.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Shannon. Lynn, I'm going to pass it to you for another question. It's how can travelers prepare for unexpected shutdowns or restricted travel that upends their plans? Will there be expanded travel insurance to cover pandemic-related restrictions?
There's quite a lot in there. I mean, insurance is so important. You really have got to take that seriously now. And indeed, we found that we're getting perhaps more inquiries than ever before from readers about insurance and what we know. And so do look into your insurance policy. Do make sure you're covered. Do make sure you understand it, because even in these times, people are getting caught out all the time. So new policies are coming along. But I think it is, again, we've got to change our mindset. We've got to sort of almost half expect for now that if we go somewhere, there is that risk that we might, get stuck, we might get stranded, that things may change overnight. And that's certainly been happening a lot in Britain. We had a stampede of Brits to the Canary Islands the other week because the Canaries had opened, come over the British. And while it's known for the sort of fly and flop beach holidays, it's also, they've got great adventure activities over there, lots of walking. So so many people were going there, whale watching, right time of year for whale watching. And then, of course, it all changed again. And so probably a lot of people rushed back, trying to get back before quarantine. But other people thought, well, no, I'm going to stay out here. Actually, I'm going to make the most of it. Same when the Maldives opened, some people had gone there perhaps for the diving or whatever. And then they thought, well, actually, I'm going to stay out here for a month or so. And I think, that not everybody's going to be able to do that. But do think about it before you go. What will happen if you do get stuck? You might have to talk to the company you work for. Will I be able to work remotely if I do get stuck in the Maldives? Oh gosh, how awful for a couple of months. Please. But, I think that, we've just got to be prepared for anything now. And certainly for the next year or two, even with vaccines coming in and so on. So do your research and think out all possible scenarios.
One of those scenarios might be who you're traveling with too, right? You want to make sure you can be stuck with somebody for a month, right? On that note.
Good point.
Yeah.
Just a pro tip, right? Bruce, I'm going to pass this one to you. You've been asking all the questions. I'm throwing one your way. Gadventures supports locally owned and operated businesses. How have these businesses fared over the past year during quarantine? And are all the Planetera businesses surviving?
Well, some are doing better than others. We're monitoring all of them, and there's a difference between businesses with Gadventures and the Planetera projects. So that's a very big question. With the Planetera projects, which we just announced, we finished our Project 100, our 100th community project around the world, and some of them have other ways to survive, and have other income streams for their communities, and they're doing reasonably well. But some of them have not been, and we've actually had fundraising, and I personally and the company's matched donations for people that we've had to reach out to help some communities, and we're monitoring them and working with them where we can, and some of them are in bad shape. And so we're working with them where we can. Operators are different. There's operators that are that can put their businesses on hold, but there's some businesses that have like hotels that have a cap, have a hotel to pay for. They can't put their business on hold. We have less communication with those operators, but we are in communication where we can, and doing what we can. I mean, admittedly, it's sporadic. We're quite close with what we can do with the Planetera project, because the Planetera groups, we feel a lot more responsibility with that group, because in some of them we've actually convinced them to get involved in tourism and create the projects to work with our program. So we're working closely with them. But we've given out grants to many communities. We help where we can, whether it's medical assistance or just the basics of food, farming equipment, and we're working with all of them. But we still have a long way to go, because again, we never thought it was going to last this long. Like, we started, our path in April is very different than it is right now. And sometime in the summer, we were still thinking we were going to get people traveling by the end of this year. And now you can see by our panelists here, they're saying Q3. So we're rethinking again, and it's just been a fluid situation that we've had different ways in which we could assist as we went along. But but I mean, it's a long answer to your question because it's complex, but it is not a blanket answer, but there's a lot of work going on into keeping those communications and doing what we can.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm going to throw this one Joe's way. This question is, this year, we've learned that technology has been a lifesaver in many different scenarios and helped us cope and adjust quickly to the current situation. How will or how can technology help change travel in the future?
Wow, big question, Chris.
From the audience, it's a big one. That's from the audience.
It's a good question. I mean, I think we're already seeing it, right? I mean, look what's happened this year. I mean, the race to a vaccine and the development of it in such a quick amount of time, that's looking to prove in the short term very effective and in the long term safe for us humans, goes to show you the role that technology can play in improving our lives. But it is also too, I think, a double-edged sword. And so if we don't have very fundamental human principles, human values that really help ground that technology, the technology can just run wild and do things that we don't want it to do. And we've seen that, in our world as well, through proliferation of social media and a lot of the false narratives that we get through there. So, it's how do we, I really come back to the question of there will be more technology. We will see innovation. That's going to happen. There's going to be some amazing things, but what are we doing as humans to really hold on and make sure that the technologies that we are creating are grounded in principles that allow us, humans and the planet to thrive?
That's great. I think, I am an observer on this, right? I get to watch, and the talk of values has been interwoven through this entire conversation, whether it's passionate travelers, whether it's considering next steps. So super interesting, and definitely a takeaway for me at the very least. Last question, much more lighthearted, easier question, and we're going to go around the horn on this one. So the question is about travel inspiration. So are there any TV shows, movies, or books that have inspired you to go somewhere you hadn't thought of before you can recommend? Sorry, let me say that one again. Are there any TV shows, movies, or books that have inspired you to go somewhere that you hadn't thought of before? And can you recommend that to us while we're sitting at home for the holidays? Bruce, I'm throwing it your way. Yes.
This is a good one for me because something came right to mind. Okay. I only discovered Netflix in isolation. I hadn't watched it before. And I watched a show called Ozarks. And then I watched a show called, I read a book called Hillbilly Elegy, which is a crazy, crazy book. And now I want to go to the US South. I know that's not exotic and people expected me to say something crazy and remote, but I've never thought about, the complexities and of life in the South and in the US. And by the way, Ozarks is not a good reflection of that, but just these two things, that series and that book in isolation has me super interested in the US and specifically in the South there, which I don't know very much about.
So Bruce is going to the South of the US. Lynn, any books, movies, TV shows that have inspired you to go somewhere you haven't been before that you think we should watch this holiday season?
No, I mean, actually, I was writing that down, Bruce, because I must admit, I haven't been doing what a lot of the binge watching on television, and I haven't been watching Netflix, but one of the things I do intend to do over the holidays is to do just that. So more recommendations, please. But what I have been doing is earlier on over the summer, I was watching a lot of virtual things on the net. So sofa safaris were one of the things I got into, and I have been on safari before in the past, but I haven't done it for a few years. And I've got such an itch now, partly because of these sort of virtual events I've seen, but also for the last, I think we're about week 3 now, every Friday in the UK, there's been a television programme where it's such a genius idea. They built a waterhole in Tanzania. They put it into a little visited national park. They made a waterhole and they set cameras up. And you're getting all this drama of the wildlife coming to the waterhole. You've got local guides explaining who these animals are, interpreting what's happening. You see how things change. You know, it's like watching a soap opera where, you know, at the moment, when we left it last week, the hyenas had the upper hand on everybody, you know. And so that has been just fascinating. And it's worth watching, you know, even if you're outside the States. Hopefully you can watch it on some sort of catch up. Like I say, genius idea, and gosh, it's got me itching to go on a safari. Yeah, that's going to be
amazing.
Yeah.
Conveniently enough, it's called Waterhole. Just looked it up. So yeah, Waterhole. Go get your share of Waterhole drama and inspiration. Wonderful. Joe, any books, movies, shows that have inspired you lately that we should check out?
Well, yeah, for sure. And I this is a shameless plug, Chris, but I was just thinking about this because our team just put together an amazing article called Around the World in 80 Books. So if you go on to AFAR.com, right on the homepage, that article is there, and our team just has taken basically you around the world, country by country, through the books that are inspiring there. So that's just an awesome resource for everybody and get us thinking. You know, for me this summer, I read Americana, which was an incredible book by Chimamanda Adichie. She's an incredible writer, and that shed a lot of light on life in Nigeria, a country I've always been fascinated by but have never been to. So that's one place. Another one that I love is a book called Silence. It's by a Norwegian writer named Erling Kage. And it's just inspired me to make sure that I'm continuing to go to places that are quiet, where I can just listen and observe. That's another one. And finally, because we're here in Maine, Henry David Thoreau did a lot of writing up in this part of the world, and there's a book called Maine Woods, and I just cracked that one open this week and starting to read what life was like in Maine in the 1840s. So excited to dig into that and explore more of my state.
So much to chew on there. Thanks for that list. I'll be checking that out. And yeah, thanks a ton. Shannon, books, TV shows, movies, inspiration. What should we check out?
Well, my answer is a little different because during the pandemic, we moved off grid and basically stopped consuming any digital content except when we came to town. I'm in town today for this call, actually. But we're up in an off-grid cabin in Colorado, up in the high country. So we've been spending a lot of time just being out. We hike pretty much every single day. But to answer your question more directly, there's a book I read as a kid that lit up my imagination for a place that I still haven't gotten to. That's like my lifelong journey, is to get to the Marquesas Islands. I read Thor Heyerdahl's account of he and his wife getting dropped on the beach there and living in tropical paradise for 2 years. And it was actually really hard on them. But it still is a fascinating story. And that has sat in my brain my entire life. And I haven't figured out how to get there yet, even though I work in the travel industry.
Well, I'm imagining it's nice, a lot of space, maybe somewhere soon. I'm actually going to jump in on this one. I was just talking to some friends before this, and I've been very inspired by Steve McQueen's new mini series called Small Acts. and it's essentially about the West Indian experience moving to the UK in the 60s and 70s. The beautiful, the challenging, and everything that came out of that. And I've been really inspired by that. I was just talking to some friends, and I'm hoping to be at Notting Hill Carnival next year, 2021, if the world allows me. On that note, that's my time. I got to throw in a little answer. I'm stepping back into the mountains. I'm passing it to Bruce. You all have a wonderful day. And Bruce is going to send this home. Thanks a lot, everybody. Happy holidays.
Thank you, everybody, for staying on. Thank you for everyone attending. But most of all, thank the three of you for being so amazing and being such an amazing panel and coming back. And if I can say, good luck to all of you in 2021, and I hope you will come back again. This panel is the best because we have similar yet different views, and everyone kind of adds to all of these topics. And you can see the comments from everyone about how inspired and inspiring all of you are naturally with just, the sharing of lateral thinking and great views. I just want to just say a very, very quick thing, I can only, business, has always kind of, worked in parallel with life. And in business, and in life, adversity always creates change. And people talk about 2020 as being, this horrible year. But I hope people use the year to create change. And so it's not a waste of time. And if you ever are, you guys are all in business, and the best part of making mistakes or facing adversity is what comes out of it and how you can create change from that. And if you get to a point in life where you can celebrate adversity or celebrate, obstacles, because it allows you to get better and get stronger. So I hope everyone thinks of that going into Christmas. And, with all these posts that are coming out of, dogging 2020, so much good can come of it if we get to a stage where we can create change, and this adversity allows us to do something special and great in the future. And I believe that. And the last thing I'm going to just put out to everyone, government plays a really big role in the restart of travel. And I just implore everyone, if they're in the travel industry, or all three of you, with travel advisories, and this is such a unique situation. If travel advisories exist, it impacts people's insurance and people to get insured and to and have that coverage when they travel. So governments have to start encouraging people and realize, because on one hand we're asking for support from the government to support the businesses, but then on the other side of the government they're not helping to kickstart the industry. And it's one of these things that we're seeing in the industry that we all need to be part of, and we all need to help with. Canvassing, speaking to your government and your local officials, that if they truly, it's not just about a financial bailout for the travel industry, which is something that needed. We need the assistance on the legislation as well. And these random travel advisories about that are going to impact how people travel. So we all have to look at that, and we all take responsibility. Can be active in the restart of travel, because in my mind and for Gadventures, travel, the positives far outweigh the negatives. We have to get people traveling again. The livelihoods and people and remote communities, the most in need people around the world, need people to travel again. So I put that out there. I just, happy holidays to everybody, all of you. It's great to see all three of you again. Thank you for coming again. And again, I'm going to have you back. I hope you don't mind. You're my favorite panel. I'm going to make this a regular thing because I love your views, because they reflect mine, but just in a different way, enough to be interesting. So have a great, holiday. Let's bring on 2021 with a lot of, positive energy. The vaccine is coming. I don't think that that's going to necessarily be a silver bullet or a magic bullet, but it's the first kind of positive news we've had in the travel industry in about 9 months. And let's have more people moving and getting out there in 2021. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all for attending.